The rain fell softly on the cobblestones of Trafalgar Square, like a gentle whisper from the Thames. It was early morning in London, the kind of September day where the air hung heavy with mist, and the pigeons scattered in lazy arcs under the shadow of Nelson's Column. Tourists huddled under umbrellas, their voices a low murmur against the distant chime of Big Ben. No one yet knew that today would carry the weight of words unspoken, of banners yet to unfurl. But for Elena Petrova, a quiet bookseller from a small flat in Camden, the day began as it always did, with a cup of strong tea and the rustle of pages. Elena had come to England 5 years ago, fleeing the chill of Moscow winters and the sharper chill of silenced voices back home. Her shop, tucked between a bakery and a vintage record store, was a haven of faded spines and handwritten notes. She sold stories mostly, Russian classics in worn translations, English novels with dog-eared edges. Customers lingered there, drawn by the scent of old paper and the soft glow of her single lamp. Books or bridges, she'd say with a smile, her accent wrapping around the words like smoke. They let us cross without asking permission. That morning, as she unlocked the door, the radio hummed faintly from the counter. The news anchor's voice was steady, almost soothing. Former President Donald Trump arrives in London today for a series of high-profile talks. Security is tight amid concerns over free speech debates. Elena paused, her hand on the kettle. Trump. The name stirred memories of red hats and roaring crowds, echoes from American feeds that had trickled into her feeds during those long election nights. But here, in the UK, it felt distant, like a storm cloud over the channel. She poured her tea, steam rising in slow curls, and wondered if the world ever tired of its own noise. By midday, the square began to stir. Elena closed the shop early, a rare thing, and wandered out, her coat pulled tight against the drizzle. She wasn't one for crowds, but something pulled her toward the heart of the city. Perhaps it was the email she'd received that morning from her supplier in Russia. Censorship delays shipment, it read. Titles on history and dissent, held back. Her own past flickered then, the way her father's underground poetry circle had dissolved after one too many raids, the way words had become weapons, then ghosts. Elena walked slowly, her boots splashing in shallow puddles, each step a quiet rhythm against the growing hum of voices. Trafalgar Square was transforming, banners draped from lampposts, simple black ink on white cloth, words are not crimes. A few dozen people gathered at first, students with notebooks, retirees with thermos flasks, a vicar in a collar reading from a pamphlet. They stood in loose clusters, not shoving, not shouting. Just waiting. Elena found a spot near the fountains, the waters trickle a calm counterpoint to the rising chatter. She watched a young woman with purple hair pin a sign to her jacket. Speak free, stay free. It reminded her of her own hidden journal, pages filled with thoughts she'd never dared publish. The relatable ache settled in then, like fog rolling in from the river. Elena thought of her neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, a retired teacher who'd stopped by the shop yesterday. They're cracking down on what we say online, he'd grumbled, stirring his coffee with unnecessary vigor. One wrong post, and poof, your voice vanishes. Algorithms, they call it. But it's just fear dressed as code. Elena had nodded, her own social media a ghost town since arriving in the UK. Back in Moscow, she'd learned to self-censor. No posts about elections, no shares of protest photos. Here, she'd hoped for airier skies. But lately, whispers of new laws filtered through, hate speech rules stretched thin, voices muted under the guise of harmony. Trump's visit, they said, would spotlight it all. A transatlantic echo of control, where free speech became a bargaining chip in trade talks and border walls. She glanced at the crowd, now swelling to hundreds. A man in a tweed coat handed out flyers, his voice low and earnest. It's not about the man, it's about the muzzle. If we can't question, what are we? Elena took one, folding it into her pocket. Her problem wasn't grand, it was small, intimate. Last week, a customer, a bright-eyed boy of 12, had asked for a book on civil rights. She'd hesitated, remembering how such reads had landed her uncle in questions back home. In the end, she'd handed it over with a wink. But the boy's mother had frowned, murmuring about sensitive topics. That night, Elena had lain awake, the ceiling cracks mapping her doubts. Was safety worth the silence? The question gnawed, soft as the rain on her window. As the afternoon deepened, the air thickened with expectation. Helicopters thrummed overhead, a low drone like distant thunder. Barricades lined the streets leading to Westminster, blue lights flashing in polite intervals. Trump's motorcade was due soon, slicing through the city like a silver arrow. The protesters shifted, their murmurs building to a gentle swell. Chants started. Simple, rhythmic, let us speak. Let us speak. Elena joined in, her voice a thread among the weave. It felt strange, this collective breath. Vulnerable. Alive. Then came the twist, gentle as a leaf turning in the wind. Not the eruption of chaos the headlines would later scream about. No bottles hurled, no lines breached. Instead, it was a face in the crowd. Elena's eyes caught on a familiar silhouette. Alexei, her brother, whom she'd not seen since the airport farewell 5 years back. He stood across the square, taller now, his coat dusted with travel grime. Moscow had hardened his jaw, but his eyes, those were the same, wide with the wonder of a boy who'd once read Pushkin by flashlight. Lyasha, she whispered, weaving through the press of bodies. He turned, and there it was, the slow bloom of recognition, then embrace. His arms wrapped around her, rein slick and solid. Elena, he breathed, pulling back to search her face. I came for the talks. As a journalist. But, this, he gestured to the banners, the quiet resolve. Alexei had stayed in Russia, chasing stories in the shadows, dodging the very crackdowns that had driven her away. They invited me to cover Trump, irony, duh. But the flights, the visas, all under watch. They stood there, rain pattering on their shoulders, as the chants swelled. Elena's heart twisted, not with fear, but with the sharp clarity of shared scars. Alexei spoke in hushed tones of home, the new laws mirroring the UK's, words policed like borders. It's everywhere now, he said. Even here, they tighten the net. But in his voice, there was no bitterness, only a weary hope. He'd smuggled a USB drive in his pocket, pages of uncensored essays from their father's old circle. For your shop, he murmured. Bridges, remember.